And there's the plural forms, us, y'all, them, and then somebody, the passive. Okay. So what we weren't even asking for from the elders at the time was the y'all form. And it would pop up every once in a while like, well, that's different. You know, in speech, when they were telling a story or something, they go, that's a different verb form. Well, we didn't know to ask for it because we were coming from an English reference. We weren't coming from a Dee-ni reference, see? And so finally we discovered, oh my God, there's a y'all form, so we started asking for it. So in the grade book, a lot of those forms were missing because we weren't even thinking to ask for it. You know, y'all come meet, y'all come chop wood, or y'all go dance, y'all go drink water, whatever, you know, y'all. The y'all form is kind of missing in here. And the passive form is missing a lot, so we didn't know to ask for it either. We didn't even know what that meant, you know, the passive, someone is doing it. It would appear every once in a while like in a noun, like for example, to fish by pole is chulu, for example, chulu. Well then, one day, just for the sake of collecting knowledge, we decided, you know, no, let's do a story about going fishing. So it was just make it up as we go. So they said, let's go in a boat and go get fish in the ocean. So then Amelia Brown goes, oh, chulu tehan. Whoa, what the heck is that? How did chulu become trulu? See, we started becoming aware of these things. Well, this means somebody is fishing. So it's more like a noun in that sense. So it's more like the act of fishing. It's not, because you're not saying I'm fishing, let's fish, they're fishing, fishing. See? So it's the passive form, and it also can act like a noun.
That's what I'm saying. Trulune, kingfisher.
Yeah, Trulune, the fisher one. Yeah, Trulune. And the village at the mouth of Smith River, Truluquat. Because upon there they fish. Truluquat, and Trulumet was the town that was down there by the mouth of the Smith River Road. There was a town there called Trulumet, and the rock is called Truluquat behind Sonny's house, okay? Yeah, it comes from that. So it's the passive form. We had a great aunt named Trulaitre, fishing woman. Tret means lady. See, Trulaitre Lucinda Hostler. She was our great auntie, right? Anyway, so we started figuring out stuff to do as we go along. Well, anyway.
And like Lauren was saying last time, you know, the emergence of the language was a gradual thing. And over time, and we didn't realize as we were going along until, you know, Tom had gotten the money to make this ball.
It's called an element.
Yep. For the IBM selectric typewriter.
Yep.
And we would have to drop in the ball to type Dee-ni, take it out, put in the English one, and type English.
Right.
It was very laborious. So when you look at these books that have been printed,
yeah, that's how this was done. That secretary would type in the English.
Wasn't there like 2 of them or something?
There were 2 of them.
I remember that.
Yeah, because they cost $1,500 to be made, because they were made specific for this language, the alphabet. At the time, $1,500 was still a lot of money, right? And so that secretary, or whoever was doing it, was Eleanor Abbott. She would type in the English word. And then she'd flip out the thing and then type in the Dee-ni word, you know. And so she worked for Tom at the Center for Community Development. So that's how this book was put together. Because all the other thing we had was pencils and paper. That was it. So it's pencils and paper in this book, and this was the output.
A lot of him erasing.
Yeah.
Constantly erasing the board. Yeah, constantly.
And so that's how we got started writing the language. And then again, like we all shared with you last time, is that we all kind of got the chance to be a part of that renaissance, to be, you know, aware of it and be around it and so forth. So then we're going along, and Bernice Humphrey finally gets her eminence credential, so she can be a state credential teacher to teach the language. So that's all rolling along. But we're in good shape. We're teaching. We're doing all this stuff. Even if I would do it, you know how you do it, a word scrabble. You know, I'd have to do it on a piece of grid paper. You know what I mean, and all on hand. You know, and then go to the mimeograph machine, thump, 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 you know, whatever, and that's how we used to make them. And because there weren't Xerox machines in those days. Again, I'm sorry for the dinosaurs. But anyway, so yeah, there were cave people.
Where's all this dirt?
I didn't know graph machine in now.
Anyway, so all that was going on. Well, then what happens is something called the computer. Okay.
Look at that.
Take one
Yeah, Well, of course, they claim that the first computer was running in the 30s or 40s, some lie.
Yeah, right.
But when it hits mass society, what was it, the 80s or something,
Yeah.
the 80s, you know?
Video games.
You know, so, yeah, so.
We had a trash 80 first, and they weighed about
I
20
don't know, when I was
pounds.
in
and
high school. we were
Paid
like-
$5,000.
Yeah, like you said, the 80s.
Typewriting or
Yeah, we
something.
I
know,
know, turned off the light.
$5,000.
Okay, so the computer, so all of a sudden, this new phenomenon is on the rise. Of course, no one knew nothing, knew nothing, hey, no one knew nothing. Thing about them. Lower register, speaking lower register right now. So the language, I mean, all of a sudden this computer comes on, and it was Apple, of course, everybody, which eventually turned to Mac, right? It became
Mac Daddy.
eventually.
Rainbow apple with a bite out of it.
Yeah, so it was an Apple, and it was the Silicon Valley, and it was the big old, it was all blown up or whatever. So then we were moving off into this, and so when we got ready to do this book, so what I had done is when I got this one finished off here, we got it finally in a print form. Aunt Betty and I worked together on this. Well then, what I did is I took this book, and I just took an English dictionary, a mid-range, not a basic and not an advanced kind of midline dictionary, and just flipped through the pages. And so Bernice and I work on it. And whatever word that we didn't have in this book, I would just write them down, and that's where this book came from. So this is a combination of this book plus the additional data and fleshing out all the verb paradigms that we could at the time. And making them complete. And so that's what this one was. Well, now by this time, so there's actually a date in this one. Unfortunately, there's not a date in that one.
And that's also green, it's the same book.
Yeah, the green and red one are the same, two different printings. So 1989. So what we were stuck with was, how to type this. And so Apple Computer created two little mini computers. In those days, the computer screen literally was this big.
Yeah.
And then the computer itself was this big, and then it was real tiny. And it actually did a font for us, and we didn't know what the word font meant. That was a new vocabulary item for all of us. Font, what is that? So anyway, so they came up with the font. And it actually could type unifont, okay? And it only typed it, in those days, there was no change in the size, nothing. It was just what it did is what it did, And so, there was no changing the style and anything like that, It was on a daisy wheel printer that all makes any sense or whatever. I'm really talking dinosaur right now. But anyway, so.
The dot matrix came out later.
Oh, that was big time, dot matrix, man, yeah. Well, anyway, so now the language is thrown into a quagmire. Because every time that I was teaching the language, and so I'm coming with a new idea. Okay, we're going to talk about plant parts, leaf and root and stem or whatever as a unit. So I'd write it all up by hand. There was no such thing as internet, so it was like snail mail to Humboldt State. They typed it. They know what they were typing, and if I was sloppy, whatever, come back. Dang it! There's 3 mistakes on here. Correct it. Send it back. Snail mail back to Humboldt State.
Few days in between.
That lesson was over 2 weeks ago. It's like, and I'm like, I'm just frustrated to death with this, thing. And and I didn't have a selectric typewriter, and so everything was all by hand. So anyway, so this computer thing happens, and so Bernice and I discussed it. She goes, well, I guess till I die, we're going to use Unifont, but when I'm gone, you can go ahead and change it. And so, anyway, so this book here was my first try at it.
Which is few and far between.
And I, of course, dedicated this to Nasal.
Love her.
So it says, this book is dedicated to memory Nasal Bernice Viola Humphrey, May 11th, 1910 to February 8th, 1994.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she and I worked together for about 27 years. Worked together. And anyway, so what I had heard, now again, none of us are linguists, and no one has in mind to hire a linguist, right? But I heard, for example, that the Navajos had this thing called a nasal hook, like that, and they put it on their vowels. Well, how we do that in Dee-ni, then, so if I want to write the word tranche, so it's, if I can even remember. I think it's like that. I think that's, see, how we nasalize this ah was by putting the backwards N on it. So that's strong, see? But I heard, oh, the Navajo's got this. This is all in Navajo, right? So I kind of got excited about that. And so what we did then at that point, I was working prior to that with Bernice too, I just took a keyboard out, looked at it. Of course, there wasn't a keyboard then. It was actually there was no such thing as a keyboard then. It was actually attached to it. It was attached to a typewriter. It was not separate. Anyway, so every sound that our language made, how can I represent it on that board? Because we're moving away from the written word, handwritten word. So did you make copies of those for us, Barbara?
I watch it.
Oh, you just made one?
No, I would have.
Oh, you already have one. Okay, so what happens then, thank you. So what happens then is this chart is formed. Because what happens is you can't, if you were trying to type these characters, good luck, right? Circle H, ain't gonna happen. A backward C isn't gonna happen. A chopped off J, a cross I, a plumber's helper. Bernice named that a plumber's helper. You know, and then they just called ow and oi. Tries to type those in a closed U and a backwards N. You know, maybe if we're in Russia. You know,
Upside down V.
Oh, yeah, or whatever. So it wasn't going to happen for us in the computer world.
The oi.
In the oi. So there was no way to do that. So what happened then is, okay, so we're taking these sounds, and so this is a little chart that came out of that. So,
Well, it changed like what?
I think it was a total of 11.
11 or 12?
11 letters were changed, that is all. Okay. And that was the concordance. You can see like on 13, GH, we got to stay GH. The vibrating sound. You know, something like that. Anyway, so then it was an experiment. So then it was like, okay, so that was this version right here. So on your sheet there for today, what I say, this was the Talo Arthur 95 to 97. So this was the first little mini publication where we tried to do that. Now, we have a sound called in our language, which we now represent with the B letter. So this is now But then we also have a oo, and then we had So we did the barred U in here, you know, different little things. We did the nasal hook. And I thought that nasal hooking was going to be easy. It's not. It's an overstrike and all this crazy stuff you had to go through to shift this and that and those and whatever and puzzles. And
that was your attempt to...
Yeah, so this was the attempt. At the time that I did this, I was not a trained linguist. I've been trained since then. I didn't know how to represent a long to short vowel, you know, like between like, you know, sla, la, or mo, you know, where is a long or short vowel, none of that kind of stuff, because I didn't have those tools yet to do that. So you can see in here that I've done them all like must, ya, is, ni, you know, but they're too long, you know, whatever. You know, but I didn't know anything about that, you know, because I didn't have that training yet. Completely. So anyway, so this was the the one in the middle, and then I went
Transitional.
Then I went to graduate school, and for the first time, for Dee-ni anyway, because again, if Jane Albright had survived and didn't get killed in a car crash, this would have been done in the 50s. So we sat down, and there were 13 linguists. There was a lead guy named Tom Gavon, and then 12 other students. They were all grad students, and I was there was probably 13 of us in total. And then they would pick my brain and stuff, and then we look at data, the few datas that we have available to us, and then from me, and then we did a phonemic study. Actually, so there are these charts. When linguists go to study a new language, or they go to China,